All right, today we're diving into a story that is just absolutely transformative. We're talking about the fight for women's rights during the Progressive Era. It's an incredible story about strength, about staggering inequality, and about the battle for the most basic right you can have in a democracy, the right to vote. So let's get right into it. So think about this for a second. In the early 1900s, women were out there on the front lines making huge changes in society. But at the same time, they were denied rights that we think of as totally fundamental today. And that contradiction, that paradox, really, that's the heart of our story. Okay, so first up, you've got to understand just how powerful women were as reformers for everybody. I mean, they weren't just taking part in the progressive movement. In a lot of ways, they were actually leading the charge. I mean, just look at the impact these women had. They took on this idea of social housekeeping, basically taking their roles in the home and applying them to the whole country. You had Jane Addams, who created community centers for the urban poor. You had Tarbell, an absolutely fearless journalist who exposed the massive corporate greed of Standard Oil. Florence Kelley fought to get kids out of dangerous factories, while Carrie Nation and Frances Willard led this huge movement to ban alcohol. These women weren't just activists. They were like titans of social reform. And this is where the story really takes a turn. After proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that they could fix the country's biggest problems, these reformers started to look at the massive inequalities in their own lives. They decided it was time to reform their own place in society. Seriously, let that sink in for a moment. A woman like Ida Tarbell could shake a giant monopoly to its core with her words, but in most states, she couldn't legally own her own property or even file for divorce. The difference between her public power and her private rights was just staggering, and it lit a brand new fire. And look, this wasn't just about a couple of random, unfair rules. No, this was the whole system. The legal system, the lack of educational opportunities, the intense social pressure. It all worked together to keep women in a specific role, basically stuck in a gilded cage centered on the home. So what do? The movement shifted. All of that energy, that intelligence, that organizing genius they'd used to fix society's problems, they turned it inward to fight for their own freedom. And guess what? It started working. They started racking up real, tangible wins. They got laws passed to protect women workers, cutting the workday down to 10 hours. Pioneers like Margaret Sanger began the fight for reproductive rights, opening the very first birth control clinic in the country. You could feel that change was in the air. But all these wins, as great as they were, they all pointed to one big thing. The reformers knew that to get real, lasting equality, they needed more than just a few new laws here and there. They needed actual political power. And that meant one thing above everything else: getting the right to vote. And that one thing had a name: suffrage. It's a simple idea: the right to vote in political elections. But for the movement, this wasn't just another right. It was the master key that could unlock all the other doors. But here's the thing. This fight, it didn't just pop up overnight. Oh no, it had been going on for decades. It really kicked off way back in 1848 at Seneca Falls. And can you just imagine the frustration in 1870 when the 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote, but specifically left out all women? That frustration eventually led them to unify, forming a powerhouse group called NAWSA to take the fight to the national stage. So their strategy became, okay, we're not staying quiet anymore. They took the fight public, they became visible, they were persistent, and they went right to the top. This image just says it all, right? These women, the suffragettes, protesting right at the White House, asking the president himself, how long must we wait for liberty? It was bold, it was a direct challenge. And when you take a fight public like that, well, you get a huge national debate. It became a true battle of ideas, fought out in newspapers, on street corners, and through some really powerful posters. And you can literally see this battle playing out right here, in the propaganda of the time. On one side, you've got the suffrage movement making its case with logic and reason. And on the other side, well, you've got the opposition using these stark, bold warnings to stir up fear. So let's break these down. The pro-suffrage argument was all about fairness and logic. Their point was pretty simple. A family isn't a single person. How can a husband truly vote on his wife's behalf if they disagree? Makes sense, right? But the anti-suffrage argument, it was all about fear. It literally screams danger. It claims that giving women to vote would be a menace that would destroy homes, jobs, and business. A pretty dramatic difference in approach. So you had this intense opposition, right? But the logic, the passion, the just relentless determination of the suffrage movement, it finally broke through. After a fight that lasted more than 70 years, they got their victory. And wow, this image, it just says everything, doesn't it? The end of the climb. It so perfectly captures that feeling of a long, incredibly difficult journey finally reaching its summit. The ballot box, which used to be the symbol of their exclusion, was now the platform for their victory. And here it is, the actual words that changed everything, cemented into the 19th Amendment of the Constitution. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Simple, powerful, and absolutely revolutionary. So yeah, winning the vote was monumental, a game changer. But it wasn't the finish line, not even close. It was a powerful new tool. The bigger fight for real social, economic, and political equality, that was really just getting started. So the real question became, not just what's next, but how are they going to use this power they fought so hard for to completely reshape the future?